When you start a new job or start working with a new client, there is one document, a treasure map, that will kickstart your ability to impress your boss and coworkers. And that diagram is an ER diagram. It's better than gold. Why? Well, because it's a picture of all the entities, the things that an organization cares about, and it shows you how they're related. So just pause and think about how many questions you have to ask people to understand what's important to an organization. Even the names of tables and columns are valuable because it provides the vocabulary used by the organization. Nothing gets you up to speed faster than an ER diagram. So, do you know how to read one? Do you know what all those circles, dots, and arrows mean? I'm going to give you the key to the treasure map. I'm going to show you what they all mean. And if you don't have your own treasure map, I'll show you how to make one and earn a treasure of your own. My name is Jeff Zerline, and I'm here to pass along some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So if you're enjoying the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me understand what content you find valuable. I also encourage you to check out a new project, AuthorizationHub. It's a plugin for new and existing web applications that lets you manage users, groups, roles, and tenants. You simply pick a route and let our UI handle the rest, allowing you to focus on what matters most. You can check out this video to learn more. An entity relationship model diagram is a visual representation of a database, and they are super handy when you have to write queries because they tell you how the database is laid out. Now, most .NET developers have moved away from writing SQL queries and they lean on an ORM for interacting with the database. And as a result, I'm seeing fewer and fewer ER diagrams. But when you're new to an organization or team, they are booster rockets for your career. So what's on this diagram? Well, an entity relationship model diagram is comprised of boxes representing tables. Generally, you'll see a line that divides the box. The values above the line are primary keys or foreign keys, and the initials of PK or FK will tell you which they are. Sometimes you'll see UQ, and that means that there's a unique constraint on that column, so the value in that row can only be found once in that column. After the name of the column, you'll generally see the data type. Those data types are like warning signs. They tell you what kinds of values can be stored in the column. So, for example, do you see varchar in the table? Well, cool. Unless people are telling you that you need to be able to save text for Mandarin speakers. How many characters can you fit in that column? Are there date-time columns? Well, maybe those values are in UTC. Maybe they're not. The last piece of insight that you might get from this document is that the column allows null values. Generally, you'll see the word null if that's the case. All right, the next critical piece of information are the lines that connect the boxes. And these represent relationships. And boy, oh boy, there's a lot of different types of relationships. The first type to talk about are identifying relationships. And it means that the child row wouldn't have any meaning without the parent row. You need to have the parent row to find the children rows. You'll generally see this denoted as a solid line with a dot on the child table. And depending on the style of document, you might also see crow's feet. And that's just a way to display the cardinality and the ordinality. And we'll discuss that in just a moment. Identifying relationships are cases where the parent represents a more informational attribute of the child. Good examples of this are tables that end with the word type. So, for example, you could have products and each one could have a product type used to classify the products. The product can exist on its own. The child row, the product, has meaning even when the product type is missing. Now, non-identifying relationships are often shown as dashed lines. Now, sometimes you'll see multiple relationships between two tables, and when there will be two foreign keys on a child table with the same parent. The columns will have unique names that describe their purpose, and those are called role names. For example, it would be an example would be a child table representing an actual child. It has a column for the biological mother and the biological father. The role names of the child table give meaning to the relationship. All right, now we need to talk about cardinality and ordinality. Cardinality refers to the maximum number of times that an instance of one entity can be related to another. And ordinality is the minimum number of times that an instance of one entity can be associated with another instance of the related entity. I'm hoping the pictures express this better than my words. If you have a case where there'll be one and only one related entity, you'll typically see a double line or a filled-in circle. If it's a filled-in circle, it means that the relationship is required and not nullable. If you see crow's feet, it means many. If it has crow's feet with a single line, that means one or more. If it's a circle and a line, well, that represents 0 or more, and it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that a circle with crow's feet means 0 or many. Now, there's some styles of diagrams will also use labels to designate cardinality or ordinality. And so, for example, a P means 1 to 1 or more, Z means 1 to 1 or 0 to 1, but no more. A label may also have a fixed range, such as 3 to 5, or even an exact number annotated by N with the quantity. So basically, there's a lot of lines, but they tell you how the entities are related and how many to expect. All right, so the next thing we need to cover are subtypes and supertypes. It's kind of like inheritance for tables. So in entity framework, this would be the type by hierarchy concept. Subtypes are sometimes called categorization relationships, and they're 1 to 0 or 1 relationships that indicate that an entity is a specific type of a generic entity. So let's look at an example. For the order, here you can see a generic entity order, and there are two possible types of orders, a sales order and a purchase order, and they have common attributes such as order date and an entry date. And you're going to find 3 parts to each subtype supertype relationship. The first is the generic entity or the supertype, which has attributes that are common to all of the subtyped entities. The second part is a discriminator, in this case order type, which is an attribute that tells what kind of the specific entity is. And of course, the last part is the specific entity, where the specific attributes are stored. Unfortunately, many modeling tools don't support notations for subtypes and supertypes. So I should tell you that the categorization relationships, they have 2 different types. There's a complete set of categories that are modeled with a double line, and an incomplete set is modeled with a single line. And the difference is that with complete categories, each generic instance must be linked to a specific instance. We've covered a ton of notations that you might find on an ER diagram. But what if you start a job and you can't find an ER diagram? That means you're going to have to ask a lot of questions. And no one likes to be asked the same question over and over. Just ask a parent who's returned from a road trip with little kids. So document what you learn with an ER diagram. Make your own treasure map. It will improve your productivity and help you impress your coworkers with your command of domain knowledge. There's lots of tools online that you can use. I like to use StarUML because it's pretty easy and I can use it for lots of different types of diagrams. So let me show you. All right, so watching me draw diagrams is a little bit boring. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about it. So in StarUML, there's a toolbox on the left that lets you select entities and add them to the diagram. So I'll just start off by adding one for the organization. And you can also add a column for a primary key. You can specify the name. You can go ahead and annotate the fact that it's a primary key. You can add a data type. You can do all those types of things. We can add another name as well. And then what we want to be able to do is we want to specify that that organization will be related to the product as a manufacturer of the product. And normally, I like to keep the foreign key name the same as the independent table, but I think in this case it makes sense to use a role name for this case and just make that as a manufacturer ID instead of organization ID. Now there's a tree view on the right, and that allows me to edit column names and set data types. I can also create relationships and update the cardinality and the ordinality in the tree view on the right inside that property box. I can also add another table here for product supplier, and I can add some more columns and create some more relationships. You'll find that you really spend a lot of time rearranging the tables on the diagram to make sure that it makes sense to you and help you keep those relationships organized and easy to read so that it makes sense to you visually. Another good idea is to actually color code the tables. So if you have several tables that have embody a general concept, you can go ahead and make those one color. And in this case, I made all the product tables green and the order tables purple. Now, a lot of tools will allow you to give it a database, and then it will look at the schema and it will generate all the tables for you and put those on the diagram. And I think that is a huge time saver, because at that point, then you just need to figure out how to organize them on the screen to make sense to you. So that's definitely a great idea. I've learned so much by studying ER diagrams, from database design to better understanding an organization's domain. I hope you start asking around your team to find one or to make one on your own. So here comes the shameless plug. Please leave a comment to let me know what you think about ER diagrams, and check out my other videos, especially the one on AuthorizationHub. It's a great way to manage authorization in your new or existing web application. Thanks for listening.